Call of Juarez Gunslinger is an arcade shooter that sends you through fast-paced levels to dispatch a lot of enemies in a short amount of time. It's the fourth installment of the series dating back to 2005. Personally, the only games in the series I've played are this one and Bound in Blood. Never had to go with the first game, and I just try to pretend the cartel didn't happen. But here we are, back in the Wild West. Now, I wouldn't say this game brings the series back to its roots as it's been described to do so many times, but it definitely was a fantastic change of pace from the slew of games in 2013 that took themselves way too seriously. So, what makes a linear first-person shooter like Gunslinger stand out from so many others? Well, I'm about to tell you. The story of Call of Juarez Gunslinger follows an old bounty hunter named Silas Greaves, recounting his tales to a small audience in a Kansas saloon. After a quick introduction to the characters, some of which are completely useless, you'll begin playing the events as Silas talks about them. The voiceover feels surprisingly natural, mostly because of John Seigan's excellent performance, but also because of how it's integrated with the game. Silas isn't always telling the whole truth about transpired events, so things in the game world will shift as he changes his story. It doesn't really affect gameplay that much, but it's an effective storytelling mechanic and creates some fun set pieces.
They attack from on high like Apaches often did. Hold on, were you attacked by Apaches? What happened to the Cowboys? Did I say they were Apaches? I said Clanton's Cowboys attacked me Apache style. I was in a pitched battle, but I was holding my own against an overwhelming enemy force.
And at other times, characters in the bar will start telling part of the story as they know it. Then Silas will butt in and retell it his way. It's interesting to watch the relationships between the characters develop. Jack will constantly question and criticize Silas' story, and Dwight will support and praise him. And Ben will look strangely nervous, possibly because of a plot twist that can be seen coming all the way from Mars. I also love how Silas always tends to make himself out to be the good guy, even when the gameplay doesn't really reflect that.
I had no choice.
But the main focus of the game is obviously the shooting, and it is done very well. Lining up headshots and dropping enemies as fast as possible is an absolute blast. And whenever an enemy is killed, they go into a slow motion fall with blood spraying into the air Tarantino style. This effect is even better when hitting an enemy with a shotgun. It's hilariously over the top, but just makes the gameplay so much more enjoyable. And of course, if you've looked into this game before, you've probably seen the infamous shotgun introduction. Yeah, this game really doesn't take itself too seriously, and I love it. It doesn't necessarily do anything innovative, but it takes well-established mechanics and uses them effectively to create a genuinely fun experience. However, if you're looking for a wide variety of weapons, you won't find it here. There's 3 pistols, 2 shotguns, and 2 rifles, and the second versions of the shotgun and rifle are just sawed-off variants. There's upgraded versions of each gun that you can unlock throughout the game, but all they provide is a stat boost and a reskin. As you play the game, you'll get XP based on kills. Stringing together combos and landing headshots or other special kill types will grant you even more XP so you can level up faster. There's 3 separate skill trees to cater to 3 different playstyles. Gunslinger, the dual pistol wielding, rapid firing attacker. Ranger, the lever action sporting, long range killer. And of course, Trapper, the shotgun blasting, up close and personal badass. Each skill tree provides abilities to increase your efficiency with its respective weapons. However, a lot of the skills carry over to different weapon types, such as being able to repeatedly mash R to reload your weapon faster, making what is normally a quick moment of downtime surprisingly interactive and entertaining, or an increase in your weapon damage during concentration, a mode that allows you to temporarily slow down time and easily line up shots on highlighted enemies. You'll have to rely on concentration throughout some of the more difficult segments if you want to come out alive. But as fast and fluid as the game feels, there are some things that slow it down a bit too much. In fact, pausing the game every time you get a skill point to open the skill tree and decide what you want to purchase gets a bit annoying. It kind of feels like a tacked on additional form of progression to ensure replayability and excuse a New Game Plus mode. I can't see much of a reason as to why all these skills shouldn't have just been given to the player from the start, considering the gameplay and story alone are enough to keep the player hooked. But even worse still are the QuickTime events. There's moments in the game where the player is suddenly surrounded and forced to use the directional keys to kill a number of enemies. It's jarring and horribly out of place, especially since there's other similar moments in the game where you're actually allowed to manually shoot enemies yourself, the way it should be. The QuickTime events just don't make any sense at all in a game like this. There's also other moments where the camera suddenly becomes locked towards a specific direction to show a scripted environmental event or a proper route to take. It's like the game doesn't always have enough trust in the player. But then we come to boss fights. A lot of these use the game's dueling mode, which is actually a lot of fun, but I'll talk more about that in the next section of the video. What I wanted to mention now are the boss fights that don't use dueling, but instead pit you against an unnecessarily bullet-spongy character. On normal difficulty, it's not that bad, and bosses can be killed fairly quickly. But on hard difficulty and up, it's absurd how many bullets the bosses can soak up. It's still not like it takes super long to kill them, but in a game about dispatching as many enemies as possible in the shortest time you can, the boss fights end up feeling a bit out of place. More of them should have just used the dueling system. Despite being, for the most part, a polished experience, it does feel like some corners were cut and the game was rushed in a few areas. For instance, two characters have the same exact intro animation, and they're within a few minutes of each other. And none of the characters during 3D cutscenes ever actually moved their mouths when speaking.
You want Reed? Have at him. I never did like that bastard. I am done here.
I don't think I need to explain why these scenes look bad. And to top it off, there's this strange effect around the border of the screen. You may have already noticed it throughout all the footage in the video, as there's no way to turn it off. I guess it's supposed to make the game look more rugged or something. But it's a very odd design decision, as it adds nothing to the experience other than slightly reduced field of view. Now, I know that was a lot of negative stuff, but don't think I hate this game. It's still one of the most fun experiences I've ever had. The satisfying shooting, literally dodging bullets, the fantastic voice acting. It's a great time of a game. But had some of these issues not been present, the game would have been a bit closer to perfection. Now, let's move on to those duels I mentioned. Call of Juarez Gunslinger features a dueling system that allows you to take on a wide array of historical characters. It's used for boss fights many times throughout the story, but also has its own dedicated mode, where you go through a series of increasingly difficult showdowns with almost every character from the story mode. You start each duel in a kind of prep phase, where you have to use your mouse to manage your focus meter, and your directional keys to get your hand as close as possible to your pistol. The higher percentage you get with each meter, the faster and more accurate you'll be when you draw your pistol. You can draw at any time, but if you draw before your enemy, you'll be considered dishonorable and get a large reduction in score. It's a bit of a strange system, though I have to admit, it makes duels more interesting. Though after enough practice, duels actually do get very easy. I can go through pretty much every duel without a single death, but once it gets that easy, you can begin trying to up your score. You can do this by decreasing your reaction time and aiming for the head. Basically, this means that the amount of fun you'll get out of dueling mode is dependent on how much you care about leaderboards. I tend to be a bit competitive, so I love trying to one-up my friends as much as possible. But if you're strictly in the game for the actual gameplay, nothing else, dueling mode probably won't hold your attention for more than half an hour at the most. However, I'm addicted to leaderboards, and that's why the next game mode is actually my favorite part of the game. Arcade mode is where the gameplay of Call of Juarez Gunslinger really shines. Each mission places you into a level from the story, but this time with significantly more enemies. It's faster paced and higher stakes. Everything that makes the game fun in story mode is multiplied by 10 for arcade. It's complete over-the-top madness. And there's so many enemies, in fact, that you can string together combos throughout the entire level to maximize your score. And for short moments where there's no enemies in sight, you can shoot various environment items like pumpkins or bottles to keep your combo going. There's never a moment of downtime. Finishing a level quicker also increases your score, so it's all about sprinting through as fast as possible. For a lot of people, I can understand finding playing the same levels over and over again repetitive and boring, but for me, I actually enjoy it a lot. Moving up leaderboards gives me a far more satisfying feeling of progression than any skill tree ever could. However, that's not to say arcade isn't without some issues. There's times when the screen gets extremely cluttered. Between the massive amounts of enemies, point indicators on each kill, blood flying through the air, and bullet impacts on your screen, it gets a bit overwhelming at times. The same issue is present in story mode, but it's a lot more noticeable in arcade. Point visualization can be disabled in the settings, but even without that, it's still a real eyeful. Aside from that issue, I can't really complain about much else. The game is just so much damn fun. I'm really hoping that Gunslinger is in the final game of the Call of Juarez series. I would love to see another entry, improving where Gunslinger left off, and I think there would be enough demand for it. With the recent release of Red Dead Redemption 2, the game that stole my attention and caused this video to be several weeks late, I can sense a bit of a Western game trend beginning. So now would be the perfect time to announce a sequel. But for now, this game is still loads of fun. After all, it's kept me coming back repeatedly over the past 5 years. So to anyone who wants a fun, fast-paced shooter with a decent story and a fairly low price tag, I can definitely recommend it. But you will have to look past some issues, like the annoying QuickTime events and cluttered screen. Well, that's about all I've got to say. See y'all next time. Ah, damn it. I dodged the wrong direction every fucking time.